high level of heaven, or I might not, or should I do this badly, it might put me in hell. So that's where there's some element of choice that exists. But not to the extent of Eastman, obviously that free will is just
yeah, so, but it's not that it couldn't exist, right? It's entirely logically possible that it could. The only difference would be not telling people about judgment and punishment. It's entirely the same world could have been the case. You just didn't tell them about judgment and punishment, and then you see how they operate with their free will. You give them some guidance, and you allow them to go out and use it.
Yeah, but that's not how it's even with the wild world. Everybody, there's always so any test. If you use the word test, there's always a incentive then to terrorism in everything, isn't there? In almost everything that we do, there's some sort of incentive for terrorism. So that's not a robust to your position.
If I can just comment there, there is incentive in everything that we do, but that's the earthly stuff. There's no reason why God couldn't have done His own differently, just to stop this problem that we have. But I think the reason why this is there is if religions didn't have that, then what would be their selling point? Because that's why it works, because you can tell others that, well, if you don't do this, then you can get more members, you can do that and that and that. So it's kind of like from a point of human viewpoint, you can see why it works better if we were told, but it works better from a cosmic viewpoint. If he didn't say anything like that, that would actually look, more likely to be true.
Yeah, but that's true. That's actually a description of paradise, isn't it? Because I'm assuming people believe you have free will in heaven. So what you described, and there's no sort of incentive there to do whatever. So that's paradise. So the question could be, why just create paradise the first time round?
Exactly. That's another question. Yeah. And that's quite hard. There is, and some people have tried to give an answer to it. I don't think that it's a sufficient answer for this. Because, you could choose freely choose only the good things, which is what you do in heaven anyway. But some people will say, you've got to be able to choose the bad so that you know what good and bad is. But look, God himself is, perfectly just, perfectly moral. He doesn't do the bad. He knows what the bad is. He knows what the good is, and he only ever inclines to do the good. The same thing with the humans. Exactly the same thing. There's no logical bar that stops humans acting like that. You give them knowledge of good and evil, and they just do the good because they're inclined to do it, like God, right? It's part of the nature. This is very difficult for theists to argue against. Very difficult.
I mean, you probably agree as well. Also, even from the religious position, it's very, very hard to justify free will from the determinism, from the materialist perspective, and also with the God's omniscience and all that. So
you
couldn't even. I mean, that's a different argument, I know, but you couldn't even justify it in the first place.
Well, I'm just granting, for the sake of the discussion, that there is libertarian free will for this discussion. I think for a theist, your best bet as a theist, compatibilism, right? Where things are determined, but there's some level of freedom in your minimal selection.
I don't get that.
The idea of free will, right?
Maybe you can help me understand that. So many times I can't understand compatibilism.
Okay.
I would say that yes, compatibilism is our best bet.
I just want to add that Abu, stop trying to push the Rob's cart, because he already has a 1800cc engine in it. So
I can always do it a bigger engine, man. As I can always do it a bigger engine. I don't have a Ferrari. Yeah, but obviously extremely limits your free will. That's even more of a limit on your will than if you. What sort of free will does God have? Does he have any free will, or is he in fact like a robot that is doing only what he can do, and he can't do anything else? Like the angels. Presumably you're going to say no, he's not like that, right? So while compatibilism might help you in some theological or discussions, ultimately it's going to undermine you with the idea of free will, generally speaking.
So how does this reconcile free will with compatibilism? What is the crux of it? How does it allow?
So the idea is that everything is determined up until the point that you make a deliberation. So when you sit down, right, when you get up out of bed and you do something, that doing of something there, when you're able to deliberate, when you actually stop and you make a choice, when you're thinking, like I always use the example of vanilla and chocolate white ice cream. The compatibilist will say that moment when I'm choosing between vanilla and chocolate, that's a free choice. Everything that got me to that moment, or almost everything, has been determined. It's happened.
No, but why?
It felt like I was free, but I've been a
Yeah.
robot up until the moment I sat down. At that moment, I'm making a choice. Right? That's how a compatibilist think. Whether I make a deliberation,
that
that's supposed
sounds
to
like
be
an assertion, though, Robert. Because if you're saying it's like determined up to that point, now what is the thing that bridges those gaps between you making the choice? I mean, there doesn't seem to be an argument there. That you just say you're liberated, but that doesn't help in any way. To me, anyway.
Well, that's what a compatibilist will say, is at that moment in time, instead of you being determined to choose vanilla over chocolate, you are deliberating. You're having a thoughtful process, and you're coming to a conclusion that isn't determined.
Yeah, but
fully determined.
Yeah, but the process that you're talking about is regulated by the laws of physics and causality. So it's going to be like that process itself is going to be deterministic. But why can you say that it's not? Why? I mean, yeah.
I think that the way we'd have to look into it more, like the neuro-linguistic type of underpinnings for compatibilism. But the idea is that because you have this first-person perspective, the mind is somehow able to avoid determinism. Right? Otherwise, as you point out, Abu, everything would just be determined. If the mind is a product of the brain is fully determined because every neurofiring is a result of a previous neurofiring, etc., etc. But what a compatibilist will want to say somehow, and I'd have to look into the literature for the technical response, is that at some point in that process, after the neurons firing, between that and your first-person perspective, there's some level of freedom in there. That's what they want to say. And by the way, it's the majority position in philosophy. Most philosophers take the compatibilist view. Very, very few take a libertarian view, and just as many, quite very few take a fully determined view. So compatibilism is about just under 70% of professional philosophers that have been surveyed.
But doesn't that undermine, in a way, the laws of physics and nature? There's appealing to some sort of mystic idea of the mind being somehow exempt from underlying causality and all the things that we know work in this universe.
Yeah, it is very difficult to explain the mechanics of it, if you like. You're spot on there, at least as far as I can tell. Again, there's a lot of literature. I haven't looked at it, and maybe people have attempted, I'm sure, I would imagine,